Start tonight with breaking news. President-elect Donald Trump is back at Mar-a-Lago this evening, spent the day here in Washington. He made that highly anticipated return to the White House. Right now, Trump and his staff are forging ahead with what you might call a central casting call for his cabinet. He just made the most consequential nomination yet. He's tapped Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz for Attorney General, a man who openly says he wants to steamroll establishment Washington.
I don't care if it takes every second of our time and every ounce of our energy. We either get this government back on our side or we defund and get rid of, abolish the FBI, CDC, ATF, DOJ, every last one of them if they do not come to heel.
Every three-letter agency, it sounds like. And with that, we welcome you to the Ferris Network on television. First tonight, Burn It All Down. 210 years ago, the British burned Washington to the ground. They set fire to the White House. Donald Trump is set on doing it all over again. And to be fair, as you can tell by the beautiful backdrop, I live in D.C. And no matter how much I try to stay grounded in middle America, where I grew up, where I came from, there is a certain amount of swampiness that sets in. Perhaps not a swamp creature, but you learn to live in the swamp. And that's dangerous because you forget what is really happening and what really matters in America, how real America feels. Donald Trump goes the opposite way. It's why so many people love him. We mentioned Matt Gaetz. He joins Pete Hegseth on the list of anti-establishment choices. Trump tapped Hegseth, an Army combat veteran turned Fox News anchor, to be Secretary of Defense. Gaetz is Attorney General and Hegseth as Secretary of Defense. Sounds like an SNL skit of his cabinet. If you were doing an SNL skit, you would pick a Fox News weekend anchor and Matt Gaetz, a colorful bachelor, for Trump's cabinet. And that's the point. Trump is intentionally picking people the establishment of both parties hate. Because Trump understands so many of his supporters want to burn the establishment to the ground. They hate the establishment. Both Gaetz and Hegseth will tell you they'll do just that. All day, you've probably heard how horrible the choices are, how the candidates are unqualified, and how shocking this all is. It's not shocking at all. It is exactly what Donald Trump promised to do and what a majority of Americans elected him to do. The president-elect campaigned on the idea of taking a wrecking ball to D.C., to the D.C. establishment. Drain the Swamp was 2016. This is a wrecking ball. It was a different type of campaign. And now that's exactly what he's doing. For much of America, the more anti-establishment a Trump pick is, the more they support that person. There weren't a lot of Trump supporters thrilled with Marco Rubio. They are ecstatic with Matt Gaetz. The more willing Trump is to take a wrecking ball to Washington, the more his supporters are willing to crawl over broken glass to back him. You can agree with that. You can agree with the picks. You can disagree with the picks. I'm here to explain it to you, and that's just the way it is. You could say 75 million Americans voted for the Trump show. That's a reference to a Playboy interview Trump gave in 1990. He said the show is Trump, and it has sold out performances everywhere. President-elect proved that quote true again today when he returned to Washington. 10-minute meeting with President Biden turned into 90 minutes. Trump told reporters the two were just catching up. And there is nothing Donald Trump loves more than the romance of reconciliation, which he got from Joe Biden. Just look at how he described and how Joe Biden described each other back during the campaign and how they acted today.
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
Our leader is a stupid person. Our leader can't get off this stage.
Congratulations. Thank you. And looking forward to having like we said, a smooth transition.
Politics is tough, and it's in many cases not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate it very much.
All the criticism of the Trump show, whether you like it, you don't like it, misses the point. The anti-establishment criticism makes Donald Trump more popular with Americans. The more CNN and MSNBC say that he is breaking the norms and are aghast at how he's throwing out everything that Washington stands for, the more people love Donald Trump. Trump is leaning into just burning it all down because his supporters hate the establishment. And that is for the establishment of Democrats and the establishment of Republicans. The establishment is the one thing that is certain in Washington, and that's what they want to do away with. Thomas Jefferson once said, the government you elect is the government you deserve. We'll begin tonight with Chris Cillizza, journalist, senior advisor of the DGA Group. Good to see you, my friend.
Hey, my friend.
Thank you. All right, his Substack is called So What? For insight and analysis of the day's news. I read it every morning. Normally, he does his first video in a hoodie. You've dressed up for us.
I got dressed up for you.
You know, for the past week, right, Wednesday to Wednesday, we've wondered what is the mandate. Mm-hmm. Mike Allen tonight, a good friend of yours and mine, somebody we both respect, said that this is Trump's middle finger.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if it's not Trump's middle finger, it is the voters' middle finger. That is the mandate, is to give a middle finger to both Republican establishment and Democratic establishment.
Yeah, I mean, you and I talked about this throughout the election, is that Donald Trump isn't hiding the ball. Donald Trump isn't trying to pretend he's something that he isn't. Donald Trump ran on deporting people here illegally, on shaking up the establishment, on doing things no other politician would say or do. So I can't be stunned by this. Was I surprised? Sure, a little bit. But it's not like Donald Trump said, you know what, I'm going to bring back the old Mitt Romney, Paul Ryan gang. He ran expressly against that. In fact, your point, I think, is so well taken. I think that so much of Trump's appeal, it's not just that he's saying Democrats are wrong. Look back, remember the whole Jeb Bush thing in 2016? A lot of his appeal is Republican leadership is out of touch with you, and I'm not. And I think this is a move that speaks to that.
It definitely speaks to it, and it sort of defies everybody, which, for as unpopular as Washington is, maybe Washington establishment is perhaps more unpopular than the media is. It would be nice if somebody was more unpopular. Yeah, more unpopular than we are. But that said, Donald Trump's sticking it to everybody. He's sticking it to the media. Back in 2019, he was mocked for this idea. You talked about it today in your note of a central casting call and picking people based in one way or another sort of on looks or on feel. Take a listen.
I was the perfect person. I was like central casting.
Central casting, you can't cast it. What do you have? You don't have anybody in Hollywood that looks like these guys. These are central casting. If I'm doing a movie, I pick you, General Mattis.
Vice President Pence, he's a real talent, a real guy, and he is central casting. Do we agree?
Were you being pejorative when you said that this morning?
No. Look, I think a lot of people took it that way. No. Here's the situation. Looks and whether you look like the kind of person who fits into this category matters in every aspect of life. I always say that. Life is like high school. You know, you try to engineer like all different things. You know who's popular in my kids' high school? The kids who are good at sports. the kids who are good looking. Now, I hate to say it. They've been there since kindergarten. They talked about social and emotional learning. But the kids that are popular are those kids. So yes, it matters in every aspect of life. And yes, it matters in politics. I think he probably puts a little bit, you know what? I don't know if he puts more emphasis on looks than, and sort of how does a person look like what you think a Secretary of State should look like. He talks about it more. He's willing to say central casting, whereas most politicians aren't. So I can't say he actually puts more emphasis on it. Publicly, he puts more emphasis on it. Does it matter? I do think it matters at some level because you know what? When you're trying to sell a policy to Congress or to a foreign government, do they look at your resume? Not really. I mean, relationships matter, but kind of your ability to sell it does matter. And again, I'm just not going to be that guy who's going to disdain everything Donald Trump does because he does it. It got him elected president not once, But twice.
Not only twice, this time with a majority. A few things to what you said. Number one, I never liked anybody who liked high school because what makes you popular in high school does not
tell my kids that all the time.
It does not make you a good person in life. But the corollary to that is I never liked anybody who likes Washington because what makes you popular in Washington and like Washington are equally screwed up values to high school. So two things.
Can I give you one? So I'm with you on Trump got elected to pick people like Matt Gaetz, so we should not be surprised or shocked. And he got elected to, and I like Mike's, I called it sort of daring Washington, particularly Senate Republicans, to break with him on this pick. I like Mike's middle finger analogy is probably better. The only thing I will say is that is smart politics, absolutely, for Donald Trump, and it works. The problem is he's got to get 50 Republican senators to vote for Gaetz. There's probably going to be 53. Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski have already been a little shaky. So I don't know. Like, again, Washington only matters when it matters. From a political perspective, very smart. From a get him confirmed perspective, because you think he's the guy to be your AG, it'll be a little dicier up there.
Okay, and fair enough. We've seen Donald Trump put out central casting figures, right? We saw him put out Ronnie Jackson. Yep. Remember that for Department of Veterans Affairs? He was central casting. He was the White House doc. He did 2 hours on the podium and then failed. And Donald Trump didn't pay a price. Somehow Donald Trump doesn't pay a price when there is political failure because he will blame Senate Republicans and say they were a bunch of squishes, and then he gets to move on, and Matt Gaetz goes back to being...
running for governor of Florida.
Matt Gaetz, right, running for governor of Florida. And look, Ronnie Jackson became a member of Congress, right. So it works out at times. There is another side of this with Donald Trump, in that the more the people who's talking about how dangerous he is and how he is violating norms do it, the more popular he gets. Is that lost on all of us in Washington?
It shouldn't be, particularly after 8 days ago. You know what I mean? Like, again, you and I have talked about this. If he won in 2016, then he loses in 2020, and he loses in 2024, you say, well, it was an anomalous time. It was Hillary Clinton, et cetera, et cetera. But he won last Tuesday, and he won the popular vote.
And he won the Senate, and he won the House.
And he won a higher percentage of the vote in 48 out of the 50 states. And he improved his margin in places like New Jersey, in Illinois, and the Bronx. So at that point, I think you have to say, well, this is more of maybe who we are, and that he has more insight than we've given him credit for. To repeat the outrage cycle that we saw in late 2016, by the way, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020, seems to me to be a mistake in that it worked. Again, politically speaking, it worked. He got elected again. So I feel like we're doing the same thing again with Gaetz.
We're doing it again, but I'll give you the last word here.
Okay.
There is a feeling, and there was during the past couple of years by, generally speaking, the Washington establishment, even among Republicans, hey, we warn enough about Donald Trump, eventually we're gonna beat him. Haven't been able to beat him doing that. And for lack of a better term, sort of the bedwetting over Matt Gaetz and over Pete Hegseth and how they're going to put people in prison and on and on and on. Probably the reason it didn't work for the past 2 years leading up to the election, and what we saw from Joe Biden calling him a fascist and the ultra MAGA and everything else, was because people had lived through 4 years of Donald Trump.
Exactly right.
And he didn't do anything that people got all that angry about.
I think that was one of the proof points that didn't work for Democrats, which is people say, okay, yeah, he was president. He did a lot of things, not everything I agreed with, said a lot of things, picked some people I might not have agreed with, but like we still had Thanksgiving dinner. And I still had to take my kid to soccer practice.
I could still afford my Thanksgiving dinner.
Right. But the point is, the world didn't end.
Right.
And I think that's the danger. When you say, if you elect this guy on November 5th, on November 6th, they're going to overrun the Capitol, dissolve Congress. You set up a situation where if that doesn't happen, even if he does things like pick Matt Gaetz, that people are like, well.
Yeah. Well, there you go. And look, the chaos worked against Donald Trump in the 2020 election because people sort of were tired of it. And we'll see where it goes.
Thank you,
my friend.
Always good to see you.
Always good to see you. If today proved anything, it's Donald Trump's hidden power. That power and how he is using it to keep Democrats fighting with each other when we come back. Live pictures of the White House, where, as we said, Donald Trump came and went today. Lights in the president's residence are still on. And just take a look at this happy slideshow of Trump's visit. He came, President Biden, President Trump, they played nice. And as Donald Trump flew back to Mar-a-Lago, there was a fireball in his wake. Trump's cabinet picks today that he delivered on the plane as he left Washington set off the usual fire alarms among Democrats. Opposing Trump right now is the only thing they have uniting them.
Matt Gaetz is being nominated for one reason and one reason only, because he will implement Donald Trump's transition of the Department of Justice from an agency that stands up for all of us to an agency that is simply an arm of the White House designed to persecute and prosecute Trump's political enemies.
I've gotten 2 different texts from different people at the Justice Department who just used the word insane.
It is shocking. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be shocked, but it sure is nervy.
Got to look up nervy. Geraldo Rivera might help us with that. NewsNation correspondent at large, Peabody award-winning journalist. I feel like I'm with Bill O'Reilly. Word of the day, nervy. Geraldo, this makes me think that if Donald Trump has one superpower, I think he has a couple, but the primary one is goading his political enemies into losing their minds.
Well, all I can tell you, Leland, is great to do your show. That when I heard that Matt Gaetz was picked to be Attorney General, I threw up in my mouth. I think it is a horrible, creepy choice. I have no idea why he did it. The others are, controversial, but I think ultimately eminently defensible. Pete Hegseth, a terrific guy, patriot, war hero, twice awarded the Bronze Star. He will do, has a steep learning curve in defense secretary, but I think he'll do it. Matt Gaetz, on the other hand, now has access to the files of his own, sex trafficking investigation from a couple of years ago, and obstruction investigation. This is not just a political figure.
Yeah, I don't think you're understanding. I mean, I know you heard the segment before. I don't think you're getting it. That Donald Trump didn't appoint him in spite of all that. It was because of all that. Because Donald Trump and a lot of people think that Matt Gaetz was persecuted by the DOJ. And Donald Trump, who was investigated up-teen zillion times by the DOJ and the Russian collusion hoax and now indicted by the DOJ, ... on and on and on. It kind of makes sense that he would want somebody ultimately loyal at the Department of Justice. But put that aside for a second. The fact that all Democrats are doing, yourself included, is talking about how terrible Matt Gaetz is, means they're not talking about the things that actually the American people told us in this election they care about.
Well, as I understand it, President-elect Trump was absolutely keen on ending the weaponization of the Justice Department. That guy is the weapon that Trump will use to destroy his enemies in the DOJ, wreck its independence. You have to deal with that issue.
Hold on. I have not seen. Hold on.
Let me finish my sentence.
No, hold on. You can say a lot of things. Matt Gaetz just resigned from Congress. He just resigned from Congress. I have not heard, and I've covered Matt Gaetz extensively for the past 8 years, I have not heard him say once that he is going to use the Department of Justice, or he believes the Department of Justice should go after the enemies of Donald Trump. I've said we should end the weaponization of it. You heard him say about destroying the 3-letter agencies. I've never heard him say that Donald Trump should use the DOJ to go after people.
Matt Gaetz is the epitome of everything that is rotten in Washington. He is someone who is privileged, entitled, backstabbing. What he did with the Freedom Caucus, the so-called Freedom Caucus, it didn't deal with the issue. Will he or will he not have access to his own investigation files? Will he, as Attorney General, have access to his own files? I want to know the answer to that question.
That's really the pressing issue of the night?
even with 53 or 54 Republican senators, I believe, and I'm on the record and you can play this tape when the time comes, there's no way the Republicans in the Senate will confirm this man. Okay. He'll make the Clarence Thomas confirmation hearing look like a walk in the park. They will dig up everything about him. He is, again, ask Kevin McCarthy,
let's just put this aside for a second. Just go with me. Okay, we agree to disagree on that issue, fine. When it comes to Democrats who consistently talk about their need to change, Donald Trump seems to get them to jump every time back into the frying pan of being united against Donald Trump, which is why they lost this election. Here's just some of Democrats saying they need to change. Take a listen.
This is going to be a period of learning for our caucus.
For people with two jobs, the economy is gas and groceries and rent.
We have to bring down the high cost of living for everyday Americans and make sure that we are there for people who are struggling to live paycheck to paycheck.
The American people have presented us with a challenge. We must learn from it.
Would you look at our mail vote? Would somebody just take a look at how we did with males and how we did with non-white males and tell me that the Democrats don't have a messaging problem, that their message comes across as too feminine?
The message of Democrats was noun, or was Donald Trump verb, threat to democracy at the end of this election, this campaign. It did not work. You have Democrats saying it didn't work. That was right before Matt Gaetz gets announced, and then everybody just jumps right back into Donald Trump's terrible. How do they expect a different result?
Well, I think that's a fair question. But let me just say this. I was with President-elect Trump when he selected Governor Mike Huckabee to be ambassador to Israel. I was with him when he selected Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard to be the director of national intelligence. I was with him when he picked Major Pete Hegseth, a wonderful, patriotic, courageous novice, to head the 3 million person Defense Department. But this Matt Gaetz selection is absolutely this to the American people, not just to the Democrats, to everybody. It's saying I can do anything, I can pick anybody.
Look, we said it was a middle finger to the establishment.
I'm going to make it happen.
We said it was a middle finger to the establishment. That's where it is. Geraldo, you are on record. The tape is marked, and we will know soon enough with the confirmation hearing where it comes down. Thank you, my friend. Good to see you. You would have known about the Matt Gaetz appointment as it happened. Download the NewsNation app for the alerts on all the big stories of the day. You can also watch us anytime, anywhere. Take On Balance on the road. Donald Trump did something he has never done before. He stayed out of a fight. In fact, he threw a lot of loyalists, one in particular, to the wolves. How that could badly backfire on Donald Trump when we come back. With breaking news. Never before has the Constitution's advise and consent clause meant more than right now. That is the part of the Constitution, Article 1, that gives the Senate the right and the responsibility, as they sit in the building behind me, to advise and consent on the president's cabinet. In a series of picks, President Trump has all but dared the thin Republican majority to oppose one of his picks. First came South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, the governor of a small state, to lead the 250,000-strong Department of Homeland Security. Next, Fox News weekend host Pete Hegseth as defense secretary. Again, an unusual pick. Steep learning curve, you might say. Character will matter in the confirmation hearings. Next up, Matt Gaetz, the firebrand MAGA congressman from Florida, nominated today as Attorney General. Republicans have 52 seats in the Senate, maybe 53 if Doug McCormick pulls out in Pennsylvania. Right now, that's going to a recount. So Trump, at most, can afford to lose 3